Headline news most affecting Chilliwack this week. A major scare for 3 young people heading off to school on Keith Wilson. The continuing argument for an Amber Alert for adults. Rule number 1, BB guns and pellet guns look like the real thing. And race season at Agassiz Speedway. Our guest this week is Dr. Tim Cooper, Professor Emeritus at the University of the Fraser Valley, here to discuss something topical, heat domes. And we're privileged to welcome Steve Croner to helm the sports desk this week. Oh, and there's also me. I know, I'm as disappointed as you are. Don's away with a bug, so, chill. Let's have some fun. All right, Chilliwack, let's get started. The Chilliwack Progress updated a story that chillTV had featured over the past year or so. A 23-year-old mother, Charlene Bell, went missing on January 30th, 2021, and her body was found in the Fraser River, almost 6 months later. Her mom, Alina Durham, has been in talks with Chilliwack Hope MP Mark Strahl to have the Amber Alert system opened up to include adults as well as minors. Strahl says he's hopeful that a private member's bill or amendment could eventually be heard in Ottawa. Durham has upcoming meetings with both Chilliwack MLAs as well as News of the Week. Last Sunday afternoon, Chilliwack RCMP received a report of a man carrying what happened to be, or what appeared to be, a rifle walking in the area of Ashwell Road and Kip Avenue. Police attended and set up a containment area. The man was located and taken into police custody. A long-barreled BB or pellet gun, which resembles a rifle, was seized by police. The man was later released without charge after being spoken to about the danger of his actions. A crosswalk collision in Chilliwack on Tuesday morning injured 3 young pedestrians, according to RCMP, but it was not a hit and run. The driver remained at the scene and is cooperating with police. Emergency responders were called to the event on Keith Wilson Road at Lindy's Avenue, and all 3 will be okay. BC Wildfire Service is concerned about the heat wave that has enveloped us this week. In a tweet, BC Wildfire's Matt McDonald called it a heat dome and compared this to the heat dome in the summer of 2021. As of the recording of this program, Environment Canada has not issued an extreme heat warning, although the City of Chilliwack has told News of the Week they are monitoring the situation. We will have 30-degree temperatures for the next few days, unseasonably high for this time of the year. BC Parks took to social media confirming what many people were concerned about. Don't expect access to Coquihalla, Canyon Park, and the Othello tunnels anytime soon. BC Parks say the cleanup after the November 2021 atmospheric river is not complete, and the damage was so significant that access to the park and tunnels will not happen in 2023. And to add to all of this, the likelihood of El Nino developing later this year is increasing, according to a May 3rd update from the World Meteorological Organization. In fact, they predict the effects of an El Nino will start sometime between May and July for our part of the world. U of V Professor Emeritus Dr. Tim Cooper will join us in a few minutes to talk about weather events versus climate change. The Chilliwack Military Museum will be holding its next Legacy Walk at the former CFB Chilliwack grounds this Saturday starting at 9 a.m. Join Jim Harris and Darren Kennedy on an approximate 90-minute tour of the area while listening to the history and stories of a time when the base was still in operation and its day-to-day goings-on. Now, this will be a very warm day, so dress accordingly and bring a water bottle. And after the break, our interview with Dr. Tim Cooper, followed by Sports with Steve Croner. Well, welcome back, and our audience is in for a treat right now. I'd like to welcome Dr. Tim Cooper to the show. Dr. Tim Cooper is a frequent visitor at chillTV, and he's here today to talk to us about, well, what the heck's going on with the weather right now? It's hot. What's happening?
Well, Berris, I've never been called a treat before, so thank you for that. That's new to me. It's hot, and it's going to get hotter. According to my cell phone forecast, it's going to be 34 degrees in Sunday and Monday.
Good Lord.
This next week.
Happy Mother's Day.
Here in Chilliwack. It's just a hot bunch of weather. It's not necessarily indicative of climate change, but climate change is a long-term statistical average. So if we end up with a lot of issues that look like this in a row, that's one of the consequences of climate change.
Well, because
one-timer is just weather.
Because I've heard that before. Because sometimes, you get some cold days, and you get, let's say, a group of people saying, "Well, clearly there's no climate change happening." So what you're saying is that doesn't count?
Not really. Climate is the long-term average
Yes.
of the weather. And weather is just what it is today and here. So climate is spread over a large area, spread over a longer time.
But having said that, said that, we get this heat dome, which I've never even heard of before, 2 years ago, and in the summer, and it fried up a good part of southern BC. And then, a little over 18 months later, we're in a heat dome in May. Is that possible?
Yeah. The phrase that's used is that the dice, when you throw them, determine the weather. It's just a question of luck.
Right.
But climate change loads the dice. So you get certain weather patterns coming up more frequently. That's one way of looking at it. So hot in the summertime is going to occur more and more often as time goes on, and has been occurring more often.
Well, yeah.
So along with the hot, therefore, goes the dry and many other conditions of dryness, such as drought and fire.
Yeah. Well, and to having so much heat so early, like I've noticed the Vedder River is starting to get quite high, so danger of flooding, and I think we're all concerned about that. Now, for those of us that aren't aware, and I don't believe what we're experiencing right now is officially being called a heat dome, although there's that speculation. I guess what I'm wondering is, what exactly is a heat dome as opposed to a heat wave?
Okay, to be honest, I had to look this one up just before coming here today. So I am interested in climate, not too knowledgeable on weather, but I can say, when it's a heat dome, it forms when there's air that's high up and is sinking, just continues to sink. The weather patterns have brought this downward sinking mass of air. Down below it, because the air's going down, it's warming up, and so you don't get condensation, and so clouds don't form. So the sun shines straight through it to the ground, makes the ground really hot, and that hot ground heats the air, which tries to rise up, but it's blocked by the air coming down. And so it goes up and it gets stuck into a dome shape, which is why we call it a heat dome. And the longer that weather condition stays, which is where the downward sinking air traps the heat, the hotter it's going to get. That's what happened to Lytton.
So then, I mean, this just sounds like it just would keep getting worse and worse and worse. I guess only ends when there's some other major weather pattern that knocks it out?
That's correct, yeah.
Wow, okay.
So, climate change says that these things will occur more frequently, but they can't tell you when, which year, which month it will happen.
Well, you see when we first moved to Chilliwack, I don't even remember all those smoke events happening, and now it's basically every summer that's something that's normal.
It has increased in frequency. I've been here for 30 years. I don't remember smoke in the valley for the first 15 of them.
Yeah.
And then there was a little bit of smoke every so often, and now it's every year.
Yeah.
So that's the frequency of event is increasing. That's indicative of climate change. So
very concerning.
There's an interesting thing as well that's happening. If you, I'm reluctant to make predictions because I know exactly what's going to happen as soon as I do. But there's two things happening which do affect the climate and do affect the weather. One of them is the El Nino-La Nina cycle. La Nina is where you have cold upwelling of water in the Pacific. That cold water takes heat from the air, sucks heat from the air, and the global temperature is lower. It's been stuck for about 5 or 6 years in this mode. It's finally switching to an El Nino. And when that happens, the warm water in the Pacific will start to upwell, and we'll have warm water which will give off heat to the air. So the heat always flows from whatever's hot to whatever's cold. So for 6 years, we've been storing heat in the Pacific Ocean.
Oh dear. Cooling
us down. Now it's about to reverse, and all that heat's going to be coming back out. And the El Nino event should occur a little bit starting towards the end of July, but it will become definitely noticeable in September. and even more so next year.
Well, and we reported on it earlier in the show, potentially starting as early as May. May to July is, yeah.
The tricky part is, when do you say it's starting? Is it
Yeah,
starting when it's halfway up, or starting at the beginning?
Well, it's easier to look back and say that's when it started.
Of course, yeah. It will go for quite some time. 2023, because of this, is likely to be the hottest year on record.
Oh, my goodness.
Worldwide, not necessarily in Chilliwack. And 2024, it should be even stronger, because it's really the tail end of 2023 that's coming in. There's another interesting cycle going on called the sunspot cycle, which most people don't pay attention to. But the sun has an 11-year sunspot cycle. When you get a lot of sunspots on the sun, it's hot. It gives off a lot of heat. When you have a very few, it's much colder. We're just coming to the peak of the sunspot cycle this summer. So you've got this 11-year cycle giving us most powerful sun, giving us an El Nino starting, and also, of course, the carbon dioxide buildup in the air is giving us an overall temperature increase from that. Wow. So it's a triple whammy coming together for this summer and especially next one.
Well, that is so complex, Dr. Cooper. I know one thing for sure. I'm going to have the air conditioning working all weekend long.
Well, if I could suggest something, that does give me an idea to mention to your listeners. If you don't have AC in your house and you'd like to get something to cool your house, if you buy an AC unit, it'll cost you $5,000 to $7,000 depending on the size. But if you buy a heat pump, which gives you air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter, it might end up cheaper. There's a $13,000 grant that you can get from various levels of government. Actually, there's 3 grants that add to $13,000. And getting the heat pump installed is cheaper than getting an air conditioner installed. Also, during the winter, when you're using the heat pump, you won't be burning natural gas, so that your carbon dioxide footprint will go down, which means a lot to someone like me. So if you could do that, that would be great. I do have a couple of horror stories, though, of people I know that have gone to a contractor who's then said, well, if you have the heat pump, you need to have a backup gas furnace. Otherwise, when it gets too cold, we need to turn the heat pump off and use the gas furnace. That was true 11 years ago. It's not true today. The technology has changed dramatically with heat pumps. Now they're good down to minus 15, the cheap ones. If you really want to get an expensive one, you can go down to minus 30. We don't need that in Chilliwack. So you can get a cheap heat pump good to minus 15, and the government will pay almost all of it. It's your best bet. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that advice. And $13,000 in rebates? That's right. That's considerable. Just out of curiosity, on average, how much is an actual heat pump to be installed?
Depends on the size of the property. Yeah. For, say, a townhouse or a semi-detached house, about 13,000 to 14,000 total install cost. For a full-sized house, standalone, probably about 16 or 17.
So most of the cost the government bears then? Is that the case?
That's right. As long as you've installed with the correct installer, as long as he's installed a heat pump which fits the government program and he removes the gas furnace. That's an important step.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very, very good advice. Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for being on the show. You're a frequent contributor. We love having you on, and we invite you back anytime. And we're working on a new show called Science is Golden with Dr. Cooper, and so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Thank you again for being on the show, and we're back with News of the Week.
My pleasure.
Alberni Valley took care of the Chilliwack Chiefs in 4 straight to bring the Chiefs season to a screeching halt. The Chiefs publicly thanked the fans for their support, and yes, season ticket packages are now available for next season. The Progress reporting that 2 G.W. Graham football stars have been picked to play in the Canadian Football Chat Prospect Game, taking place May 26 at TV Place in Ottawa. The game features 70 of the top high schoolers in the country. Offensive tackle Brody Monroe and linebacker Riley Ashley are on Team Sanchez, coached for former Canadian Football League standout and current TSN commentator Davis Sanchez. Agassiz Speedway starts their season on Saturday with Mel Power's classic season opener. This includes the Mini Street, Hornet, and Midgets. Time trials at 5 with racing at 6:30. UFV Cascades men's baseball team are back at it this week with a home game against Okanagan College as we speak at Fairfield Park, and then finish the season with a Saturday doubleheader against Thompson Rivers in Kamloops. The 14th annual Cultus Lake Triathlon on Sunday, September 17th. The event will challenge participants in several multi-sports events of varying distances taking place consecutively on the same day, same time, and same course. The half-iron distance triathlon will consist of a 1.9 kilometer swim in Cultus Lake. Athletes will then ride 90 kilometers on their bikes, reaching the municipality boundaries of Chilliwack and Abbotsford. Following this, athletes will then run a 5-kilometer loop along the waterfront path with a finish line back at Main Beach. Chiacton FC U16 Girls Coastal Cup champions as of 2 weeks ago. Notable victories over Ridge Meadows, 2-0 in the quarters, then a come-from-behind semi-final 3-2 win over the North Shore Rage after being down by 2 goals at halftime. In the final, dispatched arch rivals Vancouver Athletic in a penalty shootout after gaining a tying goal with 1 minute left on the clock in regulation. Next up, the girls will defend their provincial crown in Kamloops against the top teams from the coast, Vancouver Island, Interior, Northern BC, and the Kootenays. And to note, Berris and I here both have daughters on that team. What a year for the Chiacton FC's men's team. In their first inaugural time being in the league, they are league champs, league cup champs, and provincial cup champs. The only First Nations team to accomplish this in the history of the league. We're so proud of the team and how they represented our team and our community all year. And after the break, Cari with the weather.
Steve, thank you so much for doing sports this week. We'd love to have you back next week if you're available. And I also want to thank you for the shout out to our daughters. We're so proud of them with their roles in Chiacton FC. Such wonderful accomplishments. Now, Cari, what up with the weather? It's a little hot, isn't it? Who put you in charge of this?
Well, Berris, I have decided to reboot spring and skip right to summer. These temperatures are going to be nasty next week. It's going to be hot, hot, hot. 32 is the high, but we still get down to about 13 at night. It's almost like we went from being moist from the rain to being moist from the heat. Thank God I'm going to have a big pamper session over the weekend with Mother's Day. Back to you, Berris.
Thanks, Cari, and thanks for watching, everyone. If you have a local news story you'd like us to report on, send us a note to news@chilltv.ca. Now, let's hope Don's back next week because, frankly, I'm exhausted, and it isn't the heat. Get well soon, my friend. Also, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, and to everyone else, don't forget to get some flowers, chocolate, or brunch to your mother. Thanks, and have a great weekend. I'm Berris Karden.